Hello, my name is Nuno Correia, and I'm here to introduce you the project called MODINA, which I coordinate as part of Tallinn University, where I am associate professor. The images you will see are all from MODINA projects. By the way, this one is called Temporal Spaces. So what is MODINA? MODINA stands for Movement, Digital Intelligence and Interactive Audience. And it's a project which has the following aims: to expand the creative possibilities for contemporary dance performances and to augment the experience for the audience using digital technology, with an emphasis on exploring artificial intelligence and audience interaction. Also on-site and online, so we have a lot of online materials in our website, and it will grow bigger, this component of the project. So we have 8 partners in 6 countries, including Kino Šiška and Slovenia. We started the project in April 2023, and the project will go on until March 2026, so it's a 3-year project. It has 2 cycles of activities. I will go into that very shortly. And the project is co-funded by the European Union, so it's a Creative Europe project. Sorry, just by the way, the photo here is from another project called For Patricia. Neither Temporal Spaces nor For Patricia were shown here this week, but the other 3 projects in the slideshow are present here, and they will, the artists behind this project performed here this week, and they will talk about their projects very shortly. So as I mentioned, MODINA has 2 cycles of activities, and these cycles are composed of a call for artists for the initial residencies. So these cycles are roughly 1 year. It's a little bit more, 14 months, but bear with me. So mostly cycle 1 was in 2024. So we started with a call for artist submissions. In the call, we asked for artistic duos typically composed of a media artist and a choreographer, but these profiles could be blended. What we want is to have a duo with competencies in dance and media art or creative technology. We had a kickoff meeting with all the artists, with all the 5 selected artists in Tallinn in September 2023. And then after that, we had 5 residencies, one of which here in Kino Šiška with Naoto and Jorge, who are actually in the photo here. So they performed on Tuesday. And after these 2 months residencies in 5 different countries, 5 different performance centers, we had kind of a tour, which this event is part of, and it toured by the different countries that are part of the network. So Düsseldorf, Tallinn, Budapest, Bucharest, and now Ljubljana. Actually, this is the last event of this showcase, which is the last showcase of this first cycle. Okay. So besides the performances, we have also more knowledge-oriented events, such as this one, where we share knowledge with audience members. Also, we produce more theoretical outputs, such as academic articles. So far 2 more in the pipeline. Well, actually, now we submitted 2 more, and we are writing a 4th one. So there's been more, and in our website, you'll find all this. I have a slide with links that I'll show in the end. And also, there are software systems that have been developed for this, that if the artists allow us to or are interested in, we will also disseminate through our website. Okay. So coming up is the MODINA Cycle 2. In the image you see Yugen, which actually was performed yesterday here in Kino Šiška. So we had another call, and this call has been concluded. The 5 duos have been selected. Funny enough, we had the same number of submissions in the first call and in the second call, 91. Not the same people, different people. And we've selected the 5 duos. In our website, you have information about the 5 duos that have been selected. Actually, in the co-festival program, Kino Šiška team is highly efficient in their marketing machinery. So they're already promoting the artists that will be here in residence from January to beginning of March, something like this. So keep your eyes open for the first Cycle 2 performance, which will be actually here in end of February, a date to be announced, but should be end of February, beginning of March, something like this. And it's a Hungarian duo with a piece called Baby. And in 1 month and a half, we'll all be traveling to Lisbon, where we will meet the artists before they go into their residencies. And then in 1 year, these projects will tour, and in 1 year probably we'll meet again here to show the results, at least 3 of the results of these 5 residencies that took place. So that's about it. Here actually I have the exact dates of the Baby residency by Victor Zeri and Thomas Paul, 20th of January to 16th of March. So that means their performance will be in March, early March. So that's it. And in this image we have Collective Cadence by Simona and Grieg, who will present also their work soon, and they performed 2 days ago. Here you have some websites. So modina.eu, that's where you find a lot of videos of our performances, the articles, information about the residencies, and soon also the software, some of the software development we've been doing. The software is already on our GitHub, but it's kind of raw, and we haven't collected all the software yet. Just had a conversation with Grieg about that, and I'll be talking with all the artists about this. And yeah, we have a lot of video content, and soon even more. As this cycle is over, we'll be uploading more material to our YouTube, and that's also mirrored on our website. So that's it. If you have any question, also in modina.eu you have our contacts, so feel free to write with any questions that you may have. And we will switch the presentations, and I will pass the mic to the next team who will present their work. So thank you very much.
Hello. Is this working? Yes. Maybe just wait for a second for those who are arriving. So we were working on the project Stage for Digital Contagious and Network Bodies and Code, ++. So in that spirit, I also maybe to have a feeling of the room, I would like to know who here have seen the piece. Can you put your hands up? Who saw the show that we present here or in another city? Okay, so maybe in that spirit, we will be interested if you guys can, if there is a word that resonates of things that you see, if you can say a word, maybe like, yeah, like looping or anything, something that comes to your head. Maybe we can do a round like this.
I don't know, burger.
Burger. For those who have seen that.
Colorful costumes.
Fun.
Eclectic.
Stations.
Oh, this doesn't go that way.
Station.
I'm just
haven't
typing,
seen
so...
it.
Do you see it? Have you seen it?
What was the last one?
Have you seen?
Stations?
You saw it.
McDonald's.
McDonald's. Second time you saw the piece.
Unclear.
Unclear.
Mess.
Mess. Have you seen it?
Nail polish.
Nail polish. We can see the nail polish. Thank you so much for your kindness. So, I'm Jorge. I come from the field of dance. I started working with technology from 2017. So I have formal education in both fields.
You're stepping on the cable.
Okay.
I'm Naoto, and I come from engineering, but someone said that she thought I appeared in the world and started making art. And we're gonna just quickly talk about what this project is about, but maybe not to explain what the performance is, but how we arrived here. Basically, when we started, Jorge and me started working, we did not know each other. We met online forum. Back then it was a Facebook group. And I announced, and that was the beginning of the COVID pandemic. And I said, okay, let's meet if anyone interested in dance and technology. And there was one guy showed up, I forgot his name. I think his name is Tom or something. And then Jorge was also there. So we were three of us just chatting. And then we lost his contact, but with Jorge, we started this weekly session talking online. And then it started to become more like experimenting, sending video to each other, making feedback, making live code, movement, and exploring this. And it took a shape that we meet for 1 hour, and we just try it out, improvisation, movement. Sometimes we play music and just move. And this, we named it Best Practices in Contemporary Dance. And it's run for 2 years or so.
So maybe to round that, for 2 years we end up practicing. During COVID time, we were dancing in front of the camera by internet, and then we started using feedback. We started using basic things like green key and then feedbacks, and that evolved into opportunities where we could start sharing the practice. Where we were just insisting on dancing in front of the camera, and then eventually we end up in places where we were trying to share an embedded practice just between the two of us with more people. So how we can open up that world that is inside to other people. And that became some workshops that we tried in different ways. And then I guess we end up, then one of the opportunities that appeared at some point then was start working the MODINA project. Then have this focus on audience interactions through the artificial intelligence tool.
The difference between what we've been doing, so we started meeting in real life as well as it became possible to meet people again. And first things we tried is to have a workshop, so it's like participatory version of the practice. So it's improvisational, but also performative. And for this MODINA project, we challenged us by exploring the way to do a more like a stage performance, where just like here we have audience and us, but still how can we communicate or tell the story about what we do, which is quite a challenge because there is a wall. And so what was the strategy for us? How did we approach to this? Because it's a very different, it's not conventional way of working with the audience, right? Because you come from choreographing practice education, and then how did you approach, like how did you blend this practice and working with the audience?
So like the having the audience in the space was at the center. So it was built the way how the performance was built from. It was from this practice that by practicing some things naturally, they were evolving into something that could evolve into scenes, but we didn't want it to set a piece in a linear way. So we wanted to work with chance in the piece, so that at the end we could have fun at the end, so that we could enjoy what we were doing. And in the way how then the role, at least how the audience is being, the audience takes part in the piece, is for me is as something that they enter and destabilize, something that they enter to destabilize the piece in a way that we have to, by the beginning, start creating relations in how to solve a complex, or somehow like a positive chaotic proposal that we do at the beginning. So for example, at the beginning of what we did here, there is this also a clear intention in, at least in the way how we perform, is like we address the audience until a point, and then from there we said like, okay, now we are performing for ourselves, and then it comes in an internal dialogue, it goes up and up again. But the fact that the people are invited to play with us and take it somewhere else, it is the starting point for us to solve it somehow on the way, because then we cannot control it.
I guess it's a bit like actor network theory, because we don't say that who's acting, we're acting and you're watching, but everyone's kind of actor. So this is image, for example, is the part that we say installation, that we open up the space so you can explore. And I think the first words that we asked, there are quite a lot of like elements here that you see at first when we ask audience to come to the space, the stage, to share the space with us. And there's like a burger, like it's a McDonald's mocking station that you can explore. Live coding, which maybe we can jump into that, because that's also like.
But maybe before we move there, like just to round with this idea of the audience, at least for me, is that for me it was important that it was not about to propose something that was bad, but also not good. So they should stay in a place where that was. I was glad to see, especially here, because the space was open, and some people don't pay attention sometimes, and then just you find your place, or if you retreat. So it was something that ideally the audience needs to find a place in the piece, not necessarily by paying attention necessarily. So it's about something, at least the way how I was trying to work on something that reflect in the way how we are position our body, the body in the information age, without making it political, without making it political and without going into identity politics. So just by being ourselves somehow, and not trying to go into the identity politics.
Is it?
That's why the intention, that's what I mentioned. That was my intention, at least.
Yeah. I mean, just to be a bit critical, the way we are addressing now is like, actually we're saying that we allow audience to come, but there's like actually quite a lot of separation here, because we somehow treat audience in certain ways. I'm just like reflecting, because it's always hard to think about the audience perspective, as we are not just performing but also directing ourselves. So that's why like I wanted to give like a concrete example of like the choice of technology, for example. As we said, we have this station where it looks like McDonald's self-order terminal, but instead of ordering burgers, you create this chaotic image with live coding, and actually this is generating live coding, and also part of it is it's not a joke that it's using neural net that we trained ourselves, so it suggests a parameter that works for this combination of code. And the reason why we made it is because we do a lot of live coding, which creates the visuals on the spot by coding in real time. But it's very difficult to communicate because most of the people don't know live coding or coding, and how do we do it? How do we make it playful so that it's not people think, oh wow, I don't understand, but it's something. But just bring it a bit one step further so that they know that, oh, this is possible. Because for us, we don't want to make it like spectacular, but we want people to kind of own it in a way. That's how I see it.
Maybe that. Practice. No, you can go.
And maybe you also said we wanted to keep the performance like fluid in a way that. So we do have like set elements in the performance, but we also changed the order. Well, on the course of Showcase, we had 3, well, including Premiere, we had 4 performances, and it changed a few times. And how did we structure it?
Yeah, so the idea somehow is like it stays as something fun for us to do and something that is spontaneous. But of course, if you're setting things for a show, that's always tricky, you know. So then find a balance between having scenes, but then find also systems to not randomize, but to generate chance, so that we can keep. So in a way, it was connecting with some of the things in the morning. Is like I think we were trying to find problems that could rise by just playing with a system that could backfire also. But it was part of being vulnerable with the proposal and see. And then in that sense, that was important then to generate codes to how to communicate between the artists and then also to the technicians, so that at any point we could stop. Like for instance, when we did the premiere at some point in September, there was at some point we stopped the show. We did not some days ago here, but these things were possible if it was necessary to stop the show. And then, so the code, so we think that blurriness, some clarity with some codes were necessary for the team to know what to do.
Yeah, and also like we made, for example, cards or like map so that each element, like for example, this is what we call green key that comes towards at the end. This is nail salon with overhead camera. This is cumbia. So all these are not just named, but also how to say it. To me, it feels like more tangible that we can kind of. It has its own shape, so it's not just a scene that we do this with this cue, but it has something as a shape, so we can like reorder them if we need it. Actually, in Tallinn, we reordered on the spot because some things were not working. But over time, it became more confident.
And maybe also something that was important because that's the example of Tallinn, for instance, like some of the I think at the core of the performances to not suffer by technology. So in the sense of like, because technology sometimes doesn't work, so that we were not depending on the technology. So if the technology doesn't work, then still the show could go. So for instance, in Tallinn, the projector, it was not working. And still we could run the show. So these kind of things that somehow the nature of the work allow for the error to happen and to keep the things alive for us and hopefully for the audience to a certain extent.
So I guess it's time, and we ask the next duo to come.
Thank you.
Thank you. And we will come back later.
So we'll open up the floor to questions after the three groups present. Okay, so then I'll bring them all three. So please keep your questions, write them down, engrave them in your brain, something like this, for after the three groups present. I can keep this one.
Hi, my name is Simona Deaconescu.
And I'm Grigore Burloiu.
I'm a choreographer and filmmaker based in Bucharest. And 5 years ago, I started working on a topic, the topic of collective dances or masses of people dancing, especially studying events that were happening in the Middle Ages. Then my research developed, and in the end I started to study this phenomenon of collective rhythms and mass dances, and how the movement of the crowds is reflected in the social and political context in which they happen, but also the other way around. How the social and political context influences the movement of masses. So practically what we presented here, and we started working in Trafo in March. I don't really remember, but I think it was March this year. Yeah, it's this this idea of how through crowd movement we can understand more about identity. And how crowd movement talks about the desires and fears within a society. So I think we were really lucky to work with two people that helped us conceptually. One is Bogomir Doringer. He is an artist and curator who works with this idea of dances of urgency. He works for the Next Museum in Amsterdam. And the other one was Matt Davis, that is a politolog. I don't know if politolog is a word in English.
Yeah, political scientist.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Like that.
A person that studies politics, and that actually had a study that was really interesting to us, especially on the rhythm of crowds. So because we had a lot of discussions with them, we actually started to study how the rhythms of these crowds were happening. In the sense of how the crowds were gathering, how the movement in itself was actually starting. I think it stops if I do this. Yes. Practically what we decided and what we found out during the residency was this idea of focusing on rhythm, but not rhythm like the rhythm of the music or the rhythm of the dance, or of course these are also important topics, but how the rhythm of that specific moment was influenced by the macro rhythm in which the event was happening. As I was saying, how the dynamics in that society was, how the crowds were gathering in order to come to attend a special event, through what means they were gathering, how they were dispersed, if they were dispersed, how they were seen in society through different media of the time, of course, in the Middle Ages through chronicles, and how all this events melted in the society in which they appeared. We mainly focused on 3 different time periods. The medieval period, which was more something that I kind of knew from before, so it was easier for me to do that. But also it was nice that during this residency I started to enlarge actually my study, and in the Middle Ages we only focused on the so-called dance epidemics or choreomaniacs, which were like some type of mystical events that people really like to think now that they happened out of nothing, and and they have this thread of mystery that is attached to them. But we mostly looked at them from a very, I don't know, almost scientific perspective. And the second, let's say, slot or time period was the dances that appeared in the 20th century, especially the ones that were controlled by ideology, meaning the ones that we also know from our parents and when we were little kids, like this type of celebrations, like Slet was in former Yugoslavia. We had Romania singing. I don't think this is the right translation, but it doesn't have an English translation. The Hitler youth celebrations and things that were practically masses and dances that were controlled by ideology. And the third ones that were contemporary raves, especially the ones that again were happening in the Balkans or in the Balkan region, which were, in which the body rebelled against ideology. So starting from these 3 time periods, we were trying to make a story. And this is how I passed to Grigore. So the idea was how to use artificial intelligence as a divergent partner. And practically, I think this is where our paths separated in desires and fears, because I thought I would use this AI in a very serious, theoretical, practical, and strategical manner, and it would help me organize the research or like find out things that I have never found before, or like I had these dreams that this was going to be like a research assistant. Unpaid research assistant, which in the end, of course, it didn't happen. It was not true, and the way in which we ended up using AI was more like a divergent partner. I mean, in the sense of constantly through this process challenging us to create new narratives, to rethink the story, to try to create new stuff. So we were in between improvising with this artificial intelligence and collaborating, or like really having a conflict. And I must admit, I was in a big conflict at a certain moment. So from here, Grigore.
Yeah, I would just add maybe also something that also, caused us a lot of, let's say, grief, but also challenged us, and I think made the show what it is, was trying to find maybe parallels in which the way we engage with AI and the way AI, or I don't know, systems, digital systems are, massive digital systems are structured, parallels between that and these crowd phenomena that we're talking about. But yeah, as we were discussing about divergent paths, I'm gonna go a bit into some technical behind the scenes of kind of the AIs that we were using. And there's 2 main kinds, I would say, corresponding to 2 particular moments in the piece. One is about sound and one is about language. And I'm just gonna, quickly go over 3 aspects of each. So first of all is our sound partner, Holy Trolley. So there's 3 phases that that moment goes through. And we can call them rhythm detection, rhythm classification, and rhythm variation or transfer. So the first one, is the bit with the audience interaction. I'm not sure how many people were there, but if you were there, basically we detect rhythms coming from audience clapping, and then we build up a common rhythm in layers. And when you want to detect a rhythm, the first question is how to describe it. So I guess if you ask people, depending on their background or depending on the context, how would you describe a rhythm? The answer can be quite diverse and quite maybe it boils down to something that's rhythm is something you feel. But obviously, when you're dealing with machines, you have to be very precise and give it a definition. And the definition that's used a lot in music analysis research is giving it basically taking the durations between sounds. So looking at, let's say, short, short, long, short, short, long, like a repeating pattern of durations, that can easily describe a rhythm. Obviously, it's not enough, right, for human perception. But for machines and for analysis, it's a good shorthand. And it's what we use to detect a loop. So when this pattern of short, short, long, or whatever repeats, then you can say, okay, I've got this thing, I can capture it, and I can, I don't know, transform it into something that people can hear. And this is what happens in the first phase. And then once we've got this this pattern that repeats, the next bit is to give it a label, right, or to associate it with something. And we wanted to discuss these moments in history and these particular styles of rhythms and of,
so practically we had 4 of them.
Yeah,
we had to choose 4 because we didn't have time to train it with all the music in the world.
Obviously, and we wanted to retain some sort of control. So there's these 4 historical styles of music and dance that were prohibited or banned or somehow forbidden by the greater powers. And again, you could go super scientific and create a super analytic algorithm that matches maybe something close to what Max did in the Max and Company did in the temporal spaces installation, where you match your dance to something that someone else dances. But here we wanted to make it also part of the, or to make this search explicit. So what happens during the search is that we get these patterns of the durations, and you hear each of the 4 in turn. So you hear 1, you hear 2, you hear 3, and you hear 4. And while you're hearing one of these rhythms, the rhythm that you made is being compared against them, and it's being scored in real time. So it's kind of a race between 4 different elements, and one of them wins. And then once one of them wins is the third bit. And this is when, once we've got the winner, we want to go from this basic loop to something from the actual database, right, like a recording, a song, and to go from A to B. I'm inserting myself with using a guitar, but you don't hear my the actual sound of the guitar that's making. But I'm analyzing it in real time, and I'm controlling a style transfer system. Style transfer is something. It's a kind of generative process that takes basically an input and changes its surface. So that's what you heard if you were there. Actually, today, the other night, the first part, I had some trouble with the guitar.
It didn't work.
At some point, it started working. Once I started hitting it harder, it needed a bit of a push. In the end, we got there. It's always a bit of a struggle, but yeah, we like it like that. Or
And now my nightmare called.
Yeah, the dance anarchist. This is the other moment. Can we do a show of hands? Has anyone worked with large language models like doing something with them,
ChatGPT.
building something, not just chatting with ChatGPT. Not building a model, but using a model to build something. So we've got not so much. Simona tried to warn me about this. I'm going to go through some things that I learned or that we learned. The first bit is that the first thing that we tried, and in machine learning, this is something that's pretty common.
Grigore, but we need to explain to people what we wanted to do with it.
Yeah.
So the thing is that we gave this AI 7,000 pages of historical facts that I transformed each one of them from PDF to PNG for 1 month to practically study these pages, and with the hope that at the end of the month, this AI will be able, for example, if I'm looking for a certain event in a certain time period, I would just be able to chat with it and say, give me 5 or 6 sources about this type of event, or like, can you connect, like, in order for me to help me to search. So this was the dream, and now the reality.
Yeah. Yeah, so what I figured out, and it took us quite a while to figure it out, unfortunately, is that retraining, which works in many cases when we're dealing with machine learning. When you've got such a large model, that's not quite the answer. Retraining is useful when you want something that, let's say, like a language model knows how to talk. You want to be able to make it talk in or to give it a task. And I assume that, okay, we are gonna give it all of this research, and then it will start behaving as a researcher, or we could make it behave as a researcher, and that wasn't the right path, not really. I mean, obviously we could notice differences, but it was such a winding path that wasn't taking us where we needed to go. And we did find things that brought us much closer. One of them is prompt engineering, right? So giving it a prompt, giving it a personality, and telling it what it needs to do. So actually talking to it instead of trying to re-indoctrinate it or something like that, if you can make a metaphor. Another thing that works is tuning some parameters. So for instance, temperature of a model is how chaotic or how boring it is. So we wanted a bit of a more chaotic partner, since we found that it wasn't helping us.
Since we realized that it's not going to be a serious dance assistant, we said at least to make a clown.
Yeah, at least make it somewhat, I don't know, generative of something. And there are results of that in the piece. And another thing that really works, but I only found out about it in the final week of the residency, and we didn't use it in Budapest, but I worked on it over the summer, and we have it now, is this thing called retrieval augmented generation. So prompting, I'm showing here the prompt that we're using right now. It's not that particular. Basically your name is the dance anarchist, and you're helping us. The research, retrieval augmented generation. This is a thing that, it looks pretty complex if you look at this sequence. But basically, the idea is you've got a partner, a conversational AI, and you're telling it something, but before it hears you and it gives the answer, it's augmented with some search results. So basically, it does, like, let's say not a Google search, but it does a search in a database, and adds that to what it's receiving. So we've got this example, and this is an actual example. During the conversation, usually the partner, since it's prompted to be a bit enthusiastic, it sometimes says that people died, and sometimes it's 1 or 2, sometimes it's 10, sometimes it's hundreds. And Simona usually asks the dance anarchist, are you sure that people died during these dance epidemics? And this question gets used as a search term through our 7,000 pages of manuscripts, and we get this context, right, of 3 fragments, like search results.
Which usually is fake.
Which
I mean, it doesn't, like what usually the AI replies, it's not the truth. Practically it invents things, say, trying to satisfy my question. So if I ask him, it died? Yes, and it tries to explain why it died, how they died, but taking real sources. So practically it lies.
Yeah, so even if the sources say that the people didn't actually die, or the sources aren't believable, but yeah, it's this conflict for the AI to be either entertaining or truthful, and that's what we address. Yeah, and finally, another thing that I did over the summer, I was in this workshop at Ars Electronica called Artificial Physical Intelligence by this Dutch artist, who seemed pretty cool to me, and I learned how easy it is actually to make a chatbot into a fully conversational voiced AI. I mean, relatively, and yeah, there are quite lightweight and easy to use and decent quality systems that you can use. Obviously, there's also the more expensive and more realistic and more state-of-the-art solution from OpenAI with GPT, whatever it is. But yeah, this is what we're using. I hope it's a bit more sustainable. But yeah, if you've got any questions about that, we can talk about that later. I hope it wasn't too technical, but yeah, thank you all.
Sound. Hello.
Hello.
So I would say, before we talk about ourselves, who we are and where we come from, maybe just to show for these who have not seen the piece, a little trailer which we want to start this. Let me hope. So this is the lab we had with Mirebi Lab and Tanzhaus NRW. This is one part of the piece with installation, and then we have a dialogue. So just get you an idea of what we do, projecting on the body of a dancer.
Everything is real time.
Yeah, everything is, yeah, good idea to say that. Oh, yeah, people can hear. So it's all live motion tracking on stage in a dialogue with a pre-recorded avatar. Also talk about this relation in a minute. So the idea is to show you the parts of the piece before we talk about ourselves. Or shall we talk about ourselves now?
I will talk. Yeah,
Maybe
let's talk about
ourselves. Okay. So you start.
Okay, I start. So my name is Christine Bonancea Solu. These lights are very too strong.
Come on, you're on stage.
No, but it's been our actually relationship during the process like that. This is but okay. So basically, we're both. I mean, just to say, we're both like director. Strong artist, huge history in work, media art. You talk about yourself. And me, I've been working internationally as a choreographer, and I work with a lot of people and stuff. And I absolutely came through motion tracking because I work with multimedia artists, and I work the space. I move the space, I move my space, I move the space, that I create space, and I move space through movement, of course, but also with people in immersive, sometimes in interactive or participative. And eventually, I ended up in Doc Digital. It's a space in, really, I want to be heard. I don't see you. It's a space in Berlin where I live, that started to work with a lot of digital tools, post-COVID or during COVID time. And eventually I start to wear this suit that we see in installation, which is motion tracking suit. You will explain more, but one of the basic one, Rococo with magnet, which tracks your movement. They use that in a lot of digital world now to create avatar, a lot of this visual, entertaining, anything, but also, of course, in films. So it makes me a lot of sense that as a mover, researcher, specialist in movement, whatever history, blah, 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 that I get there to actually experiment with these new tools, because it's a very productive. It's absolutely now everywhere through a lot of this visual seen everywhere in virtuality. So I tried, and I immediately experienced the relationship that my body was not very well implemented, that the movement was not very proper, but at the same time, there was recognition of some gravity aspect of how I embody gravity. What I do with gravity, it was my ID. It was really like with the Rococo prototype. So basically, it struck me immediately, and this is where, at Doc Digital, I was started to play with that, and started to play with that, and he jumped in, or you were here, and he started to play with me like, and we make some joke about these figures, and where I started to have this desire to bring virtual to real, bring back actually the real or the body in the center with these tools. And then question of avatar, of course, images. So, voila, this is me.
Okay, so I'm Chris Siegler. I would say I'm a digital artist on stage. I was brought into the idea of digital tools on stage, actually at the Center of Art and Media, where I was first starting, not doing my own art. I was working for artists. By the way, that was actually for me the key encounter. I was working 5 years with Bill Forsyth, Frankfurt company, on a digital dance tool called Improvisation Technologies, which is now in dance schools, kind of a standard of contemporary dance technique education, and that discussion with Forsyth was always about architecture, body, time. So it was actually something really near to me as an architecture student, becoming a media artist, also working, studying at ZKM at the HFG, and so I actually quit my my studying, worked at the Visual Media Institute for ZKM, and also started doing my own work there since 2002. And since then, I was actually always clear that I was so fascinated by, because I always was acting before I studied architecture, that the stage, the black box theater, is my environment where I would like to insert technology into it and also expand the idea how the body can interact with the audience, or maybe interact with virtual worlds or with augmented reality nowadays. I also worked with electronic spaces, electronic light installations, always real-time interactive with robotics. And here, since COVID time, we were actually thrown into VR that actually was affordable, also with Rococo lowering the prices for low production, for small production studios. And I said, I can step by step afford to buy the infrastructure to do really complex VR environments, which then led me to Doc Digital, where I became part of, because we had actually a parallel interest to invest in infrastructure and also share it with the audience, or with professional dancers in Berlin, where you joined the workshop, which we did. The first to initiate Doc Digital was December 21. And that was the key moment.
I'm like a home artist there. So basically, they were inviting some people who were working in the house, always with multimedia art type. So you see, we still introduce each other. We still meet.
No, the idea was very much about finding people with similar interests, and we with a strong interest on stage, both of us, we said we want to do something in Modina for the classical stage black box, and that's a huge challenge because these environments demand its own environment. Actually, VR and I would say augmented reality is best not inserted on a stage setup with its own. The theater machine has its own, I'd say, laws of timing, of setup, of complexities, and it's much easier to bring dance into VR than to bring VR into the classical.
The big challenge was that actually, and as we start to talk, we talk a lot. So as we start to talk about it, really for me, I wanted to have this idea that, or the essential of this idea is like to bring back these senses, this feeling of the body, meaning like working with it all and not just the projection type virtual space, which is very rich of creativity, but how this device always is a props, is something in between me and the world. Yeah. And then having that I become the device, so we name it the double flesh, or something that I integrate the double image, the narcissism, or the things through me, which is a classic figure, literature type figure. But really to use these actual images, like these avatars that are very present everywhere as projection, back through this real world, and what does it bring in the sensitive and
actually starting with the flash is a key moment actually for us to experiment with, because my background was to bring this idea into Eugen was another performance I did during COVID called Pop-Up Stage Arena, which was actually a live motion tracking environment for augmented reality, where the audience had an iPad, or later in Berlin we did it with Magic Leap 1 augmented reality glasses, where there was an object around a real dancer in a motion tracking suit, quite kind of a virtual costume, like a blob around a dancer. It was a funny idea to start with, to generate a virtual costume, really like taking augmented reality in VR as an expansion of the idea of stage design, because my background is more architecture, stage design, and then bring that into an objectual dialogue with the dancer, like mirroring the movement with this virtual transparent blob, and people could really see that blob only in their iPad and going around as a camera people. So I invited the audience to go around a circle stage. But it has its limits, because you can only see the actual event through a technology lens. And that's something we discussed and said, no, we want, if possible, project VR on the body.
So that was the big, we had a lot of like conversation talk about that, because it was a fantasy almost like, but how is going to happen like in like 3D or 4D, like lifetime, like
holograms,
to be specific, to be good enough, to be this and that. So the glitch culture, okay, so we learn, I mean, you know, I learned more. Okay, because I was very much like, it has to be this. No, actually, we have to learn what it's going to be. And also in technology-wise, because the thing's going to follow me everywhere. Yeah, it's my double flesh, emotionally, psychologically, whatever, physically, and here in performance. You're laughing. But yes, and actually, it's how I play. You talk about clown, but how much I'm a clown with myself. How much I pretend to be this and that. This is an image that can be anything, maybe. And that was, I mean, also a level of...
Talk about the image people see. So we may talk about the structure of the piece now. I think the first part is installation. So people really have, again, the iPad, which I used to use as a camera for people to go to see augmented or virtual reality content. It's quite the traditional thing. So you see on the left side a person, audience member with an iPad, and they see through, or maybe on her body, wearing the motion tracking suit, the avatar already on her, in her, or around her.
Yeah, which was first layer also, that what people not really experience this way, but seeing this avatar through screen. So it's like bringing back some familiarity, but at the same time, still this is concrete. So almost I can touch.
And actually, when you go really near with the iPad to her, you see almost more detail in the avatar on her skin than Unreal. It's amazing what meta creation can now do in Unreal. But that was for me also a research phase. I was really not a professional in Unreal yet, and I had lots of help from Mirevi, especially one programmer, Ben Fischer, who had an amazing achievement, amazing study works, which was actually a redistortion tool for one-to-one projection design in reality. I can talk about it in the second part. So here you see actually the real one-to-one size avatar, seeing the installation now projected on her. And this actually is kind of a virtual production idea coming from film. You know, virtual production in film, this volume system is actually an LED wall or a projection wall with a live camera, with a real actor, and in a virtual environment. So you'd overlay real elements, live living elements, mechanical elements like cameras into a VR perspective. And the same thing, maybe just go one more, that, and then I come back to the third part. But this is the VR virtual production studio, which we created out of the idea of film environments. We said we have a specific use on stage. Maybe we can use the projector as a virtual camera. And then the only problem is that this projection angle of a projection lens is always distorting reality. And what Ben did with his calibration method, which took always 1 a day for us to calibrate the stage according to this.
So I calibrate
software.
like 300
we
times
calibrate
minimum.
Everything. And
it was every day, so many times.
Yeah.
Actually, as a mover, what was quite interesting is I was super static. I was very much static days and days.
Yeah.
And the research and the development in residency was very much around that, with all this calculation implementation for me. Yeah. But just saying.
No, just want to finish that idea of projecting reality on you. And actually, the virtual reality is actually one-to-one with the representation in real stage. And that's not a trivial thing to project a Cartesian system from a system through a projector lens. And what happened then is actually talk about dynamics again, static, standing around, because this avatar is now moving with you through the space. It's not just a projection mapping 2D, it's projection also in depth. And that's really an amazing achievement, I would say, to have a projection mapping virtual production studio which works one-to-one with reality in the VR. And coming back to the structure again.
I'm going to just say something and jump in.
Yeah.
So this is what immediately with this idea, Chris was telling me, it's impossible. We're not gonna. We don't know how to make that. Yeah. And I was like, it might be. So basically, we did it. It happened. I know. I saw their work, their effort to do it. I've never been as patient as that in my life. It's being always in static. As for a mover, choreographer was very demanding to go almost in this place of the opposite. And also the understanding or the calculation of all these parameters and stuff, which is not absolutely abstract, it's absolutely concrete, but it's how finally I start to measure space. For me, I measure space to feeling, sensation, energetic, motion, breathing, my body. And here, suddenly there is all these parameters and calibration, and my body has to be here and there implemented. So it's such, I mean, it was another way to process the body, which was eventually the opposite of my intention. But then, after getting back in action, I was back.
So now we have the third part. The first is the projected VR, which was actually quite demanding. And also, there was always a lag and disproportions. You have seen the spill on the scene. It was actually, we wanted to have a black curtain in the back, but then at the end, after 2 performances, you say, hey, it's interesting to see this kind of extra lag time or maybe disproportional mapping, and then there's kind of a dialogue between what you see in the foreground with the dancer actually you should look at, and then also the mistake in the background, which sometimes we just left it. And then the duet is the third part, which actually we were using, for me, discovering Unreal as a tool, I found one little thing which everybody takes as granted in Unreal or in Unity. These transitions between one movement, like someone sitting or idling, and then someone running. And this transition was interesting for me. How can we use it as choreographers, directors? This ability of these game engines to morphologically morph from one animation into another. And think about what you can do with it. So we just said, why can't we just morph an avatar choreography into live movement and back? So we have a dialogue between her as a live improviser and a pre-recorded avatar movement. And that's something we technically really simply solved with the positioning tracking. So we have the tracker on her back of her or her suit, which when she is near to the screen, she's actually, the avatar is mirroring her. When she goes away from the screen, the avatar gets more autonomy. So that was a dialogue, a real formal dialogue between an autonomous movement of an avatar, standing in front of it, looking from back, from far away, and then moving towards, and then the movement slowly transforms into life. And that was amazing.
So, and just
was my favorite.
Yeah, and for just saying, for me, so I was on, let's say, the 3 plans, which generally has performer or mover in space, or even an actor. You integrate your momentum, your presence moment, and So how you transfer, how you habit your own space and who you are, towards your project. An environment, people, body, in 360, in front, whatever. So this was, of course, the performance, or what it is as the performer. But here, in this interactive setup, and with this image that should be me or another me or thing with me as a dialogue, so I had to be aware. And not just of like things I know, what I know, but how it shows, how it transfers. If there is glitch, mistake, recalibration last moment, or like, is it okay? And with so I was on different plans actually, but it was still quite set up. But we were always in vulnerability, technology-wise, as each group has an experience in Modina. And what was also interesting for us, and for me, I was also in calculation space non-stop. I had parameters in my body movement, because Rococo, like tracker, here you cannot roll on the floor, there's some jump I cannot do, I cannot shake, there are a lot of motion, actually I'm really limited. And recently I performed again also without the suit, and I felt so free, but here I got back to so basically this was also, I didn't realize how much tension it created to my body quality and my state to be in this, like the suit or in these parameters. Plus we had the space tracking, which was also, we think, oh, it's a space platform. Like, no, it's a space tracking. We had so many like things are problematic also in some shows that suddenly my avatar is like, wow, like, where is it? And then he's coming back, hey, and you're like, so it was very much another way for me also to experience basically the project and what we did. And also it reveals through time, it revealed through the performances. During the residency, we had a lot of work with first building a new suit.
We wanted to deconstruct it, actually. We didn't like the suit aesthetics, but that was a huge mistake.
Yeah, and then we did like the cable, like you had the morning thing, so we did the cable old-fashioned style. Didn't work out.
We lost 1 month, actually, and that was a big hiccup for the project, and then we had accept limits for technology, and we wanted to expand the envelope also technically, but it was just, yeah, so but we don't have to talk about this.
But there was also, that create a lot of questions, that create also momentum of how we work together, what do I expect, what do you want to do, how we're going to manage the space, and And this is, after it was aesthetic, after it's how you built what you think aesthetically, what I want aesthetically, like after you merge aesthetics in between like two director artists want to have their it was very also interesting, and we went through a stage. So stage moment, how you create this, how do you deliver this, all this experience or this momentum, even if you have, of course, as usual, your first proposal, object and making, and then what is out of it. So we're like, that way I joke about the light, we're like, no 10% more! So this kind of intent, or we know that now this light create this infrared that's gonna mess up these things on this color of, and these things only. And there was so many levels of actually dealing also with this reality space, and not just, of course, the prop and the tool, but also how this real space is making it the momentum with the new tool.
It's a machine where we insert another one in there. So this is the. Okay, so I think we are done.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you.
Hi, so I invite the other groups on stage to sit down. You can, feel free to move around. We can play a chair game and dance with some music. So we heard 3 really interesting accounts on dance and technology. So with topics as varied as audience interaction, live coding and dance, AI and dance, VR and dance and avatars. So a lot of different topics within the broad field of dance and technology. So now I would pass the microphone to the audience. So if you have any specific questions to any of the three groups, or any generic questions about Modina and kind of common experiences, whatever. Anything goes. But I would pass the microphone to the audience. Will you?
We have, yeah, I have
Okay. Someone is.
Hi. Maybe it was not clear in the beginning, actually, how all the teams started, actually. Was it like the procedure when the selection, and then was the residency, and then was the premiere? And now it's how many presentation at the showcase festivals? Each group, maybe you
So
can
I can zoom in more on that, and then someone may jump in as well. The process started with, of course, the call for proposals, as I mentioned. Then we had a kickoff in Tallinn, and after that, every team went to their residency. The residency lasted for 2 months. The consortium, Modina Consortium, is composed of 5 performance centers and 3 universities. So we have 5 hosts, which are the performance centers. And then the universities act as mentors. So the universities have weekly meetings with the artists to help them develop their work. With different teams, this worked in different ways. In the end of these 2 months, there's a first showing of the output of the residency. And after all the residencies are over, we go for holidays. And then when you come back from holidays, so after the summer, we had a small tour. And this small tour means that in these 5 dance centers, in each of these 5 dance centers, 3 teams go to each of these 5 centers. And there are 3 performances of Modina in each of these 5 centers. So each team performs in 3 different countries, in 3 different centers. Ideally, not the one where they had a residency in. It's not the case for Jorge and Naoto. We couldn't fit you in another one. They actually, because they did a residency here, and now they're doing the tour here, back here. Not ideal, but agenda constraints led to this. And also, the universities come back, in this case, me. Well, Naoto has a double role also. Naoto works with me, so and we organize these talks, these events in collaboration with the host, and in this case, Kino Šiška organized a fantastic program in the morning. Those of you who were here in the morning could see that. It was really inspiring. And that's it for this generation, and then we have a second generation coming next year. Kickoff in Lisbon in January, then residencies, then holidays, and then tour again. The same modality, 3 times 5, so that means, so in total, each cycle there are 20 performances. So 5 out of the residencies, plus 15 out of the tour. We call them showcases. And all along the way, there's also these kind of talks and conversations with audience members. In the end, in the very end of the program, we're going to bring everybody together. So the first generation, the second generation, in Düsseldorf, in Tanzhaus NRW, to have a big party. Joking, well, maybe we'll also going to party, but we're going to have discussions on, common discussions on all the projects together. Yeah. Did I miss something? No? Any more? I think you had a question, Ewan?
Thanks. So, from some experience seeing artists experiment with technology, I'm interested to ask, and I know some of you touched on this in your presentations, but to ask you all, like the 3 groups, the 3 projects, all of you started your performances with some kind of audience interaction moment in all 3 cases. And I'm curious if this came out by accident or if it was a deliberate thing that kind of came out of the way the project is or the nature of the work you're doing. And then if you could maybe just, and I know some of you touched on it, but if you would summarize what you were doing with the audience interaction, what was your intention?
Let's start. Yeah, go ahead.
So for us, actually, we had another scene. The installation with the audience interaction was actually something we designed as a prelude. Just something, go on stage and look at the technology, look at her, go near to her. Don't be so distant, like classical stage sitters are always distant, the fourth wall or whatever, if you want to say so. And we wanted to just make sure this is not something which is mythical or mystical or magic. It's just tech, sensors, iPad here, there's a face tracker. Come on, look at it. Oh, look at these details and stuff, but just search it. And get your own relationship with this tech stuff, which is necessary. So that was important as a conceptual part, to just step into it and not being fascinated by our ability to magically stage technology for you. This is not something we want to do.
I'm going to add something. But we had, this one works better. We had another experience throughout an interactivity that we didn't expect. And it was through this failure that you learn from failure, of course. And so we had 2 shows with full interruption because disappearation of the avatar. And me, I had to either find the calibration was not enough, so we have to reboot the suit or do something. Then you stop the music and I start to talk with the people. Yeah. So we start to give kind of some lecture. Then it start to be another type of work or performance where we have start to have conversation, and some people enjoyed it. Some people really have this reaction. Oh, it was cool to understand the technology, and some people were not so much into it. But it was surprising. But voilà, it was another interactive.
So we just found something actually. In circus shows, when you have a real difficult stunt, acrobatic stunt, you intentionally fail before you do the real difficult part. And they said, hey, maybe we can work with that. You just have this 2 crashes to show how fragile the system is, and it was fragile. So it was not provoked.
You want to say something?
So I can see it from different ways. By any chance, if you came to our premiere, actually we had a performance in February and August, and those ones we didn't start with audience interaction. So as we briefly said on the course of showcases, we changed the format, and we kind of like settled with this to start with the audience interaction. And to me, the rationale is that I want to, but I think we said, but to make it, I think it also resonates that to have people familiarized with what we do, and we show it in the right way. So that it's not daunting or overwhelming for people, but it's something possible. That's something I want to give the impression.
Yeah, maybe in that sense also, because in the piece so you experience at the beginning what we are doing in the piece is not more than that. And you experience in first person what is going to happen after with all the theater apparatus. And also something that for me was very important is like, since the core of from what it comes from is from this joyful practice that the 2 of us has, that is very joyful. At the moment that you start staging that, we need to find ways to destabilize that. So at the moment you invite people and then you let them play, then the clothes that you might need to use might get lost. So that was part also, like just you introduce chance into the performance.
I think this part with audience interaction was the ones that we thought more about, because we had, but it was a requirement of Modina to have audience interaction. Yeah. I don't think they would kick you out if you don't do it in the end, or like give you only half of the money. but it was a requirement. So
The question still remains: why you started with that? Why not more in the middle and things like that? So it's still a relevant question.
to start it, but we didn't start it with that.
Yeah, it's towards the start, but it's not at the very beginning.
Yeah, we didn't start it with that. And we actually had another interactive part where that we did only in Hungary, in Trafo, where we invited a member of the audience to chat with the chatbot. And it was complete fail. But because of the chatbot, I mean, because it was not, and it was really like very complicated. There were too many things, you know, that had to happen technically, so that we felt that if we put this responsibility of an audience member, a thing that I take very seriously, like what responsibility do you give to the audience? Like you need to provide the context in which the audience member feels, I don't know, okay to do it, you know, you don't kind of push or like embarrass that person in one way or another. So I think with this audience interaction, I didn't want to use it at first because I thought it's irrelevant in what we were doing, because we didn't manage to find the right audience interaction that would fit into the concept that we were having. So in the end, we ended up only with this little moment in which we ask people to clap, and we extract, or like Grigore extracts from that specific clapping a kind of rhythm that deviates into these 4 specific forbidden music styles. But my question for Grigore still remains, what does that mean? You know, and how does this specific classification, you know, how real it is, and what are we trying to say with that? But usually when you work in a duo, you know, you have to compromise and you have to give up certain things. So yeah, for me, audience interaction is really tricky, also with technology, because puts a lot of pressure and a lot of responsibility on the audience as well. Especially if it's not, I mean, they had something that was really playful. I also was in Bucharest and I had a lot of fun being and singing with them and things like this, which was completely different. But with us, I felt that people were like, oh, we have to make a rhythm now, and this rhythm has to sound, and like I felt like, no, like really we have to either relax it or kind of find a way in order to enable this, you know, to make it really work.
Yeah, and I think, yeah, it's a lot to do with the format that we're working inside of. Like it's a lecture performance, so we're lecturing, we're telling you about something. But then we're also giving the audience space to interject or to something, and yeah, it's very tricky, right? Because we talk about prompting an AI, right? So you can give it a role, and it's gonna take that role. It's not gonna ask you why would I do that. It's gonna do its best. And then you're going to prompt the audience, which is kind of what we were trying to do, especially when we were asking them to talk to our chatbot. And then when when someone from the audience comes and asks the chatbot if they like or they want to do a dance about pizza, like, okay, that's not there's nothing you can do. It's not what we expected, or not what the show or what the story benefited from, but you just have to adapt or to cut it, because obviously, it wasn't helpful. And with the sound,
the question was, the question was like, does it help the story or not? Like this
does
is
it
like,
advance?
does it really help us to have it or not? Because if it doesn't really help us, like to have it just because it's cool.
Yeah, we also thought about okay, we're gonna, like, Simona is gonna talk to it during the show because it makes sense that way, but why don't we also add it as an installation, like before or after, so you can see that it's real, or maybe you're thinking of something that you would like to ask the dance anarchist and you're curious about something. In the end, we didn't do that, but yeah, technically it would be possible. But yeah. And I'm not sure if I if I need to add something about the other moment. It's also a bunch of compromises and a bunch of things that like.
Who chooses? You choose. It's not the AI that is actually choosing.
Like the initial loop?
No, like if the audience claps something and they create a rhythm, you say that the AI is choosing, like practically is extracting that rhythm and it transforms it into something that resembles a forbidden musical style. But the process through which the AI arrives to that, it's a very subjective view over what, you know.
Because it has to be, because you can't give it total freedom, right?
Yes, but this is something that it has to be said, you know, because it's a difference when you say, oh, because some people might understand that actually what they are clapping is actually leading to something that is a forbidden style. It's our interpretation as artists of that moment and how it leads to that. So I think here we had most of the, let's say, ethical discussions over what is, I felt many things were unethical. He was more free maybe with these things, so we had a lot of...
No, I mean, I wouldn't, I would agree that there's many ethical issues, and for me, well, there was a pragmatic problem that as we were preparing the show and up until the actual showcase, you never have more than, if you're lucky, 2 or 3 people looking at you and helping you do the thing. So whenever we try to clap or whenever we ask someone that we know or someone who's there to clap, it's just 1 or 2 people and you get a certain result and you work with them and it's some sort of a relationship. When you have a crowd of 50 people or however many, it's so unpredictable and so something that you can't prepare for. And my impulse, because I know that we're going to be in this situation, is to build a system and to put the people in that system and just let whatever come out. But this wasn't okay. It was established that it's not okay. So we had to build this scaffolding of, okay, let's make layers, let's make loops, because we can't risk nothing happening, or we can't risk not having something to, palpable and then to take wherever we want. So yeah, there's many ethical and practical questions, and we reached a compromise that I think works for the purpose of where we want to go, but I wouldn't. Yeah, it's not ideal in any case. Yeah.
Thanks for all these answers. It's really interesting. I had a specific reaction to the audience interaction moment that I'd love to talk with you about later if you're interested. But
I just want to add something to the component of audience interaction. So yeah, indeed. So it's audience interaction and artificial intelligence are two, I would say, main topics of MODINA. And it was very interesting when we had a kickoff. In Tallinn, so we had a discussion on audience interaction. We had another discussion on artificial intelligence. So a little kind of marketing exercise. So we wrote an article on best practices for audience interaction in technology-mediated contemporary dance. So that from our website you can download it, you can access it. But I have a feeling that if we would have that conversation now, the results would be even richer than the ones we had a year ago, a year and a couple of months ago. Still, maybe there's something in that article that is interesting for you. Another thing is, I think that's quite interesting. We don't have the 5 groups here, we have 3. But the spectrum of how they highlighted either artificial intelligence and or audience interaction was very varied. We had, all the groups are in a spectrum of maybe some groups highlighted more audience interaction and less AI. One of the groups had no audience interaction in the end, although they wanted to have it, but then they dropped it for dramaturgical reasons. And the same with AI. Some groups wanted to have more AI, and then they also let it go more. And yeah, we had a tolerant. We didn't kick anyone out. No, not yet. We still have half an hour of tour. No, joke. Too late. Great. More questions from the audience, please? About the specific, one of the specific groups, please.
I apologize. I didn't watch 2 of the 3 performances. One I'm very familiar with, but I'm kind of intrigued with what you've just explained about yours, and I was just curious as to whether there's going to be a part 2, because in a lot of research and performances, you see the interesting and the opening of what can potentially be, and then the funding runs out, right? Because they only have one run. So like with Simona's, I just feel like there's so much more potential because they're running into this problem. Is that something they would do, or Modina or the European Union would support so that they can go farther? I mean, probably for all the other groups as well, I'm not sure. I just kind of hear sort of the conflict that was here, and if we had more time or we got another year, we can do another step and make it even more robust than what it is.
Does anyone want to?
Yeah, to be honest, I think what I was trying to say is that we have a fundamental different understanding of how this issue should be. And I don't think even with 1 year of constant research, because it's not about solving one moment, it's just about thinking differently about different things. And it's okay. We don't have to think in the same manner. It's super okay that we are thinking differently and we are trying to... And our piece, it's about this conflict. I mean, we are realistically, like sometimes really, really saying that there is a conflict, you know, but it's okay, because we live like in a free society in which we still have the right to be in this type of conflict. So, and also how Christine was saying, like, sometimes, you know, like when you work with technology as a dancer, as a choreographer, also I come from film, so maybe I'm not such a big dancer and choreographer. So, but the thing is that you feel that you become submissive. You know, it's like you become submissive somehow, in the sense that you want to make it work, but the only way in which you can make it work, because apparently there are only 3 different ways in which technically can work, and they all fail. The only way you can make it work is that you change. You change something. And for me, here it was the fundamental problem that I think won't change also with 1 year of research or more money. The fact that I don't want to change, you know. I think technology should change. I don't want to change my body, or like I don't want to be more static. I don't want, although I'm very static in what I do, to be honest, but I don't want to change the state of my body because, or like the state of my mind, like to go crazy or to be traumatized, because technology is not working. Okay, it's not working. We don't use it. You know, or like we try to find a way in which it becomes enriching for the body and the mind, not it becomes, you know, like this. And in our topic, the conflict was that we were trying to speak about technology doing the opposite that we were experiencing. You know, no, it's a liberation of the body. But in the end, I didn't move. You know, I was staying in the office doing PNG to PDF for 1 month. He was working here. We had like a dance venue and like a studio, and we were staying one at the table, the other one at the other table, not talking. Everyone was really trying to work, and it's like this technology, like the use of technology sometimes can alienate. You know, like maybe it should connect, but there are specific moments in which it alienates the body. So we also have to say these things, you know, and it's not that we're not using it. Of course, we are going to continue to use it, and experiment is extremely important, and we have to find ways in which to make it work. But also we have to think about these things, you know, like how is our process? And our process matter, you know, because we are humans.
Can I bounce on it? Because you talk about me, so I want to bounce on it. So, submissive, I didn't say, I will not say it. So something. And maybe because we fought also, so that's why, because I was not submissive. And basically, I experienced like what you experienced. And yes, it was also my fight, and I expressed it. And I express it in a large, beautiful studio with 3 men working in front of their computer and me being like calibrating, exposed. And like, yeah, over like more than the month for me. But also, when I say I've been very patient, now regarding all this, yesterday after at the end of performance, I was touched because I was like, well, it demanded all that, but I learned a lot, and we ended up, yeah, I was saying we delivered, and I recognized how much this, I have faith. I believe that we need to get back to the body. The conversation and this morning was very interesting. How all the biotechnology is going back towards, how we are going back toward the essence of life and the body, even through technology. What are the questions? And I think we're getting back into that. And what we know and how we use the body by the end, I feel it's always a source or the source. And yes, this technology is all the other way to express and to learn and to be, but we are getting back always into that. And I think that's why I'm like, yeah, I like to go in this path. Maybe it's difficult, but I think we still both learn, or we learn. I mean, just to be in a positive aspect.
Just a small remark to that. So I think there's always, no matter if you're a choreographer, a dancer, or a digital guy, a technologies programmer, there's always a question: if you work towards an artistic result, is the tool dominating your artistic intentions, or intentions dominating the tool? So then you can say, if this tool doesn't fit, then I buy another tool or develop something else. Or for us, for example, not working with a magnetic inside-out system than outside-in system with OptiTrack, which costs like 10 times more. But if you have the money, you can do a better result without calibration. That she would free her with whatever she does on stage, with dynamics, with kind of the modalities of movement, which was restricting at the end. We had to reduce tempo and staggering movements and jumps to make order to make the suit work, because it was not built for that. So there is tool, like who is like hen and the egg, who is first? And if you work in technology as an artist, then we always have this confrontational dialogue, no matter on which side you are. Actually, same for me than for her.
Yeah, and I just still that way there was always this debate. I think at the same time I totally reflect of what Simona said, because we have each our practice. And by the end, our practice is very much implementation of this physical body that has basically most of the time our emotional poor stability because we have to reframe ourselves. We do every day, and then in practice we feel it. And as technology, we try to sustain and implement something that has a certain stability. So we feel so vulnerable by the end, also not being able to practice, to express our part, or that's why I think it was also something challenging emotionally. The physical body, how much is not submissive, but will be served and will be used, and as so in the dynamics, it seems obvious that okay, we're gonna use because the technology in demands, and as we actually try to bring the other dynamics, so. That's why it could be frustrating. And yes, I guess.
Just yesterday, one sentence. It went the other way around yesterday. We found that she was expressing herself without limits, more or less, I would say. No, yesterday, the performance, we found there was a limit. I felt there was something, we superseded the idea of her struggling with technology. And that, I have to say, I was really happy about that moment yesterday, I felt.
Maybe just come back to the original question. I think we have interesting start of our performance because we did we always say that it's not a project. So this performance itself is a project stage for something. And now it's ending, and we will have to find next opportunities to keep it running. But this best practices in contemporary dance is never a project. It's just we do it, which we also acknowledge that it's a privilege that we had time and space to do this, that we just do it. I mean, as you know, you said, everyone has practice, and for us, that's like what is the bond, and you know how it's running. So if we have another project, we can do it as continuation of best practices. So that's and I think that's also connects to what we were talking about, the bodies, because I'm a bit lost. It made sense in my head, but
I don't know. I mean, I was just thinking that, say, like if I compare from the premiere time, because it was very different. In the premiere, there is no, because it was possible here to use the hoist. Here there are like these big things, the mechanic, they hold the lights, and we thought it was an aesthetic thing that. Was an aesthetic decision. So in the premiere, those, because of security reasons, that has to delimitate the space where the audience go. So there were no audience coming in the space. But then during the tour, because the spaces were so different, well, here is, I don't know, the space is very different. We are not on the stage. It's very different than on a stage. Then we realized that the important was just to have fun first and then to interact with the people. So although it was an aesthetic decision that it was possible here, then when we come back, that was not one of the first things that we decided, like, we don't do it. It's not necessary. And we need to find joy in what we're doing. So they're just coming back to the body. So for me, it's like, I need to trust in what I'm doing, and if it's, it should bring me fun, a joy, and then position the relationality. So then to choose when to address the people, to now I'm trying to communicate with you something, and now I'm trying just to believe in that I'm practicing something, that it means something. What about the joy of the audience?
You talked a lot today about the joy. So what about the joy of the audience? Did you incorporate that in your piece, or how did you thought about the joy?
Yeah,
how the audience would enjoy or being, enjoy.
Thank you so much for bringing that. Yeah, that's especially like that. For me, it was important in the beginning, then to have a sense of how the space is, and then being with the people. So in the beginning, then how can we then bring the energy that we can take at the introduction into the piece. So the intention in the piece is from the beginning, introduce joy in the installation, then take that energy back into the piece afterwards. That's the way how I approach the joy.
I just want to add one little point, which about the question you asked about the continuity of the projects, right? So what the piece is, the life of the pieces, and how the European Union could support this, or Modina, or something like this. So as I see this is a very important question for us. So how we see this, and I believe this is how the EU sees it, but maybe I'm wrong, is around this magical concept of capacity building, that the project should be should serve as a learning tool for this generation of artists, right? That were working in Modina. I'm not sure how far we got with that. That could be a question for that. But I don't feel that that capacity building necessitates that these specific projects all continue. No, maybe they found that this is a dead end, this approach, but the lessons learned will pour into the next project, right? Or another project, or maybe it is this project. That if we achieve that, that the knowledge increased around the topics of the project, right? We will be very happy. I think the EU will be happy. To continue supporting project upon project, I mean, it actually has happened in a sense. Give you an example working with Simone. So we've worked already in 2 projects already, right? And actually the case with Simone is very interesting, I would say, because she's also been successful finding other fundings to make, I give the example of the previous performance we worked with together, continue. We didn't pick Simone for this project because she had worked with us. No, actually the consortium is different and it was completely different process. So, but somehow it can happen that the growth of one project may lead to another submission that is successful, etc. Maybe it was coincidence, but maybe I hope that going in this journey also has led to this capacity building in Simona, for example, in her team and etc. Right, with Greek and so forth. But they can comment further on that. But just to address, I think that was a very important topic of your question. And yeah, and we're happy to support if they want to continue with their projects. We're happy to support as we have with potential partnerships. We can be part. These things have happened in the past with previous projects. Any more questions from the audience? One specific project or?
Maybe just, yeah.
Anyone wants?
What is the joy of the audience? For you?
For others, you mean?
For others.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think, for example, in what we do, the joy of the audience stays in the interaction, and also we didn't design that specific moment to be interactive to create joy. I mean, for us, that moment of interaction with the audience was strictly functional, and it had the dramaturgical role of practically starting a story about something. So it was a way of starting a story. So I think, but in what I do in generally, there is, or it should be, a kind of intellectual joy in finding or like putting together some information. Because I use I try myself to be a bit more relaxed and maybe address, like when I'm saying this information, because it's a lecture performance, sometimes I don't take myself too serious, you know, not to create this boo-hoo-hoo, you know, setup in which I become to lecture to people or something, and I like to make fun of myself. So yeah, I think it's more in this more subtle manner for me, in the joy. Also, I'm not a very joyous person, I don't know.
Maybe for us, actually, it's an interesting question. We never ask us this question because we were trying to insert, actually, we are into an environment where people are interested in looking at, like, seeing dance, really classical, going to the theater, looking at dance. In a way, we try to insert VR as an expansion of possibility to see dance differently, happening as a dialogue, as a duet. So we didn't want to show the avatar as an avatar, we wanted to show the avatar as a dance partner. So really focus on movement and movement dialogues and get away from the idea VR is something you have to present as itself, as a fascinating fact. We really wanted to tell us like a story about dance and dialogues of classical theater, interaction with audience to live dance with another extension of live dance into an avatar, which is not live, but actually is also not entirely pre-recorded because the avatar is not just a mirror, it's actually kind of reflective, its own character at the end was really something. I want to talk about the end because the end is actually where the avatar takes over. Try to talk about aesthetics and beauty out of a glitch moment. So that's something also, a proposal where the avatar could even maybe have a dialogue to inspire us.
Yeah,
so that was
I'm gonna just add something. Try to be quick. For me, yeah, it's not about they are happy and joyful. So it's also an experiment for us anyway. Yeah, it was a project. It's an experiment project. It was fragile enough. And what else they're gonna receive, I'm not sure yet. But the essence of the idea was actually to have maybe a sensitive point of view of what we expect through these imageries and all these proposals through virtual world, how we expect it and experience it through the real. or to the real body. So maybe it's critical, maybe it's curiosity, maybe I don't know. But and this relationship with an avatar, as we define it as a form. But for me, the end, actually, the avatar doesn't take over. So it's a yeah, but not for me. So voila. So this is where we had a cleavage, and and by the end, so it's not joyful. So
ask the avatar as well.
If the avatar takes over, at the end of the world. So I'm staying in my world, and I'm happy.
For me, it's hard to answer without oversimplifying, but I think one source of joy is when you encounter a technology. At least that's how I deal with it as an audience member, and this worked very potently with your show. And I think both of yours, like you get a, like without wanting to, you get an image of, okay, I see what this is, and I think I see what this can be, and then to have your expectation subverted or surpassed in some way. And I think we talk a bit about this when we talk about active divergence. So like having a system that goes somewhere where you didn't necessarily train it or prepare it for. And that's a point of excitement for me.
We are geeks.
Of course, we have to be.
I asked that question, but well, because we're not entertainers, so I don't really care. But I know that if I'm doing something, some people like it, so that's how I'm just being honest that I do what I do, and then if some people like it, then I'm happy. If others don't like it, then
yeah,
it happens.
I resonate with that
it's
a lot.
Contemporary dance.
But for this project, it's I had to put that on the shelf a bit, but not totally. Obviously, there is a part that's very self-indulgent, and I admit that. So that's fine.
Okay, let's stop this.
One last question from the audience, maybe, or comment, or otherwise maybe we. I mean, there's a lot to say about audience and about technology. I would have a few, but I think we reached a good point. Yeah, I think we reached a good point. So, thank you all for coming, for your time, and thank you to the artists for all sharing your experiences and ideas and your work. That was great. So thank you to Kino Šiška for hosting that wonderful hosts here.
Thank you, Mato.
And co-festival. Yeah.
Thank you, Mato, Mateus.
Mateus. Yeah, thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you, Mitya. Thank you, Irena.